Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today. We're going to spend some time in the first hour here talking about persecuted Christians and Islam. And we have in studio with us a good friend, Pastor Stephen Broden. He founded the Fair Park Bible Fellowship Church many years ago, back in 1987, serves as their senior pastor. He's also served as the president of the Fair Park Friendship Center for over 18 years. He's been on various radio programs with us in the past, and certainly has been a spokesperson for things like the pro-life movement, as well as economic opportunity and improved access to education. He also ran for Congress a number of years ago in the 30th District, and certainly has a lot of expertise in the political area, but will really be joining us today, at least initially, to talk about this upcoming rally. And we have information about it for those of you that are at least in the Dallas area and want to encourage those of you that are in other parts of the country to maybe use this as a model for you to do something in your community, because there is going to be a very important rally for Christians to stand up in support of Christians persecuted in Iraq. We have that in our articles section. We have a link to the Facebook page in our web links. And, of course, we have information about certainly Stephen Broden and his church in our bio section. So, Stephen, always great to have you in studio with us.
Great to be with you.
I was just thinking, though, this is the first time you've been in this new studio. I think we have upgraded the digs a little bit. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I'm absolutely impressed.
Well, it's just great to have you here, and I want to get right into this issue because we are seeing lots of issues that are of concern. One of the articles we've posted here today, ISIS won't stay in Iraq. We now have information that came down just this morning that U.S. weapons now in the hands of ISIS. We should be very concerned about ISIS and as it is taking over that land, but more importantly, we want to focus on the plight of Christians and what has happened there in Iraq.
Well, certainly ISIS, I think that's what the president is saying, ISIL.
Yeah.
But it's ISIS, right?
Yes. ISIS
is the group right now that's targeting Christians and Jews across the Middle East and perpetrating a kind of caliphate and jihad against Christians to eliminate them according to their faith. And so we've got to be real concerned about what they're doing now that they've acquired U.S. weapons and have the capacity to do, I think, ground war better than Al-Qaeda and even the Taliban, for that matter. So we've got to be very concerned about this group.
You know, my commentary today is one in which I make the case, and I hope that most people would agree, that in some respects ISIS is more dangerous than Al-Qaeda. A lot of that taken from the Daily Signal, where they had 11 different reasons, and I pulled some other things from other articles. But when you talk about the land that they actually occupy, 35,000 square miles, more than the size of Maryland. When you talk about the money they have, hundreds of millions of dollars perhaps now in their war chest, and getting as much as $2 million a day just from the oil fields that they occupy, and then the tremendous media sophistication, I think we have to be concerned about ISIS, and certainly there's the policy issue about what we do. The president will go on front of the American people on Wednesday to talk about that. But I think at the same time, we need to certainly support those Christians and other religious minorities in that area. And I'd love to know a little bit more about this rally and how you really want to mobilize people to do that.
Sure. We're having a rally September the 14th, which is a Sunday, this coming Sunday, at 4:30 in front of the City Hall. And this is our opportunity to, again, bring this information to the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex and to inform the Christian community that this kind of persecution is happening across the globe, and it's happening primarily, not exclusively, but primarily in Muslim nations. Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate fact that we want to bring to the community is that we are funding them. We are subsidizing many of these nations that are perpetrating persecutions against Christians. And that information needs to be out there in the public square, because I believe the church has the capacity to influence the government to suspend or terminate this funding. We do have influence. We still have influence in America, and we ought to use that influence to get the federal government through the House of Representatives to check the funds that are going out, where they're going, and why they're going out to these Muslim nations, and then begin to use them, the money that they're receiving, as a means to stop the persecution.
Wow. You know, we had, obviously, as you are well aware, sitting in that very same chair on Friday, Representative Louis Gohmert. I know he would sponsor that, and I know a variety of other members of Congress would sponsor that legislation. So I think one of the action items for many of our listeners is to find out if their elected representative would do so, because it doesn't make a lot of sense, Stefan, to me, that we, for many years, have been funding, for example, Egypt. And when Egypt was more of an ally to us and to Israel, maybe that made some sense. Mm-hmm. But when the Muslim Brotherhood took it over, or when we today are sending money to Iraq and Afghanistan, in which even though we have spent a lot of blood and toil and treasure, that is a place where in many cases Christians have been persecuted by the existing organizations and governmental entities, not to mention some of these interlopers like ISIS.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The Coptic Church in Egypt is under great duress right now, and many are being killed and persecuted by the government there that's headed by the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood has a goal, an ambition to produce a global caliphate. Mm-hmm. That is to transform the world into an Islamic worshiping world and the application of Sharia law. And unfortunately, to the tune of almost $750 million, we have funded the refurbishing of mosque. We have funded putting in a sewer system for them. And we're doing all of that while they're persecuting the church. I think that's wrong. They're using your money and my money to fund the persecution of church. I don't like that. I think we need to do something about that, and we need to make it known that that is unacceptable. And the only way I believe that that can be done in such a way as to influence how it's done and how money is being disseminated is that Christians, who represent almost 80% of the population in America, need to speak up very clearly and make it known that we will not tolerate and we will not support Muslim nations who are persecuting Christians.
If you'd like to join our conversation, we're going to open up the phones fairly early today, because I suspect many of you are going to have some comments about persecuted Christians. And I would be remiss if a little bit later I didn't ask Stefan Broden to address the pro-life issue, especially in light of the fact that there is a huge Planned Parenthood abortion clinic that has been located in the black community not far from where we broadcast, not too far, as a matter of fact, where I've been speaking in church for the last couple of weeks. So we want to certainly address that issue as well. But if you'd like to join us today, perhaps you have some thoughts about whether or not we should continue to fund Muslim nations that persecute Christians, whether you think that should be an action item that we could put together and begin to mobilize. If you'd like to join that conversation, 1-800-351-1212. For those of you in the Dallas area, can I really encourage you to come out to the rally, which will be this coming Sunday. There's a press conference on Wednesday. But for most of you who are not in the Dallas area, can I give you an assignment, and that is to take this idea and take it to your local community. We have the information there, so it won't be very hard if you can find 2 or 3 motivated people for you to have a similar rally around the country. And wouldn't it be exciting if Point of View was the stimulus for some of those and actually begin to get the attention of some of our members of Congress? If you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Stefan Broden in studio. We'll take your phone calls and continue our conversation with him right after this.
The Point of View Commentary with Kerby Anderson.
You know, the last few months have shown that the terrorist group ISIS is an extremely dangerous organization. We are seeing the horrific pictures from a terrorist organization that kills both Muslim and Christian with little provocation. The Daily Signal posted 11 reasons why ISIS might be more dangerous than Al-Qaeda. One reason is the fact that ISIS is more media sophisticated than Al-Qaeda and excels in using social media as a tool of terrorism. They post various tweets and videos in English in order to strike terror in the hearts of the West. Another reason is that this terrorist organization is flush with cash. As I mentioned in my commentary last week, they earn millions of dollars each day from the oil fields they occupy and from the extensive extortion racket. ISIS is also more dangerous than Al-Qaeda because of the land it occupies. It currently controls territory the size of Maryland in the very heart of the Arab world. By contrast, Al-Qaeda controls no major territory and is dependent upon the Afghan and Pakistani militants who serve as their hosts. ISIS is also the most heavily armed Islamic extremist group in history, having captured huge amounts of military weapons and equipment in Iraq and Syria. It is also acting like its own state or country with its own army, administration, judiciary, and Muslim propaganda operation. Another reason for the danger of ISIS has been its ability to attract recruits. Many al-Qaeda-linked groups are now pledging allegiance to ISIS. This is also giving the terrorist organization access to a global network of terrorists. They also benefit by the fact that the dissolving borders of Syria and Iraq make it easier for recruits to connect up with ISIS militants. A final reason is the vision of ISIS to once again establish a caliphate with the leader of ISIS as the new caliph. This is also attracting Muslim support and may prove to be another major recruiting tool. In many ways, ISIS may indeed be more dangerous than Al-Qaeda. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Stephen Broden with us today, and he is a pastor, of course, and has been the senior pastor for many years at Fair Park Bible Fellowship Church. Also as a candidate for Congress, 30th Congressional District, and we need to get you in Congress with all your common sense ideas. That'll happen someday, so it's just great to have you in studio today.
Yeah, we're listening to the Lord about that.
Yeah. Well, again, I just love the fact that you have certainly been such a pillar in the black community, and certainly you deserve to vote to get to Congress, and I'm hoping that will happen in the future. But we have a full bank of phone calls, but just before we get to this, we were talking about the Muslim Brotherhood. There's a spinoff to from the Muslim Brotherhood, and that is Hamas. And I learned something the other day. Hamas is the Arab word for zeal, but it's also an acronym because HAMA actually stands for Harat al-Mawqawama al-Islama, which means Islamic Resistance Movement, and it was one of the offshoots of the Muslim Brotherhood. And if you want to see what it is like to live next to a radical Muslim group, just go to the border of the Gaza Strip and Israel, and you can see, and of course, what it has been for Christians and Jews for some time around radical Islam are of concern. And it's interesting that the Jews come out and we as Christians don't. But go ahead.
Here again, Hamas and the Palestinians receive much of their funding.
Yes, they do.
From the United States. And they're persecuting Christians and targeting Jews. And we've got to stand up and stop these kind of contradictory policies that is going on right now and using our tax funds to support that kind of foolishness.
So you're going to be talking about that at the rally and press conference. Talk a little bit more about, because I want everybody to, if not attend this one, if they're in the Dallas area, to develop one.
This is not the first rally. We did a rally before, back in June, in our first attempt to bring this information out and to inform the community as to the level of persecution that is going on. And what we are attempting to do more than anything is to try to mobilize the Christian community to take a stand. Let the record show, let history show that Christians were not silent at a time when this kind of persecution and targeting and genocidal targeting of Christians in Muslim world is starting to metastasize and take off globally. It's not only happening in Muslim world, it's happening across the globe. And the thing that is really sickening is that we're funding that. Here's a fact that was represented, I think, in the New American Magazine. It says, over the last 10 years, Pakistan regime has raked in over $20 billion of U.S. tax-funded money. And that government has been brutally persecuting and oppressing their sizable Christian community for years. Pakistan regime consistently ranks as among the worst in the world in persecuting its Christian community. The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, in its 2011 annual report, said Pakistan continues to be responsible for systematic, ongoing, egregious violation of freedom of religion or of belief.
Wow.
And they've gotten $20 billion from America and continue to get money from America.
Let's take another phone call, or let's start taking phone calls, probably a better way to say that. And we have in studio with us today Stephan Broden, but let's go to the state of Massachusetts, or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, WARG. Dulce, thank you for calling today.
Oh, I am just so thankful for this opportunity, but I have to say that my blood is boiling because I cannot understand why we would fund nations and have tax dollars of American citizens actually used to furbish mosques and aid these nations and help terrorists. And at what point does this become urgent, and when do we start rallying the American Christians to speak up against this and to let President Obama know that we find this outrageous, unconscionable, and criminal?
Well, that's why we're doing the rally, right?
Exactly. September.
I'm really hoping to be hearing from this, from you concerning this in days to come. And really, I personally will be happy to lead a rally in this state, in this liberal state.
Well, wonderful. I do believe that the Christian leadership in America has an incredible opportunity because we have an influential voice, because we have the capacity to speak to our representatives and to alert them to the fact that we are aware of this and that we do not condone this, and we want to suspend all funding of Muslim nations who are currently actively involved in persecuting Christians. And I'm telling you, it's Egypt, it's Afghanistan, it's Pakistan, it's Iraq, it's going on in Libya, it's happening in Lebanon, it's happening in most of the Muslim nations over in the Middle East, but also in Indonesia as well. Yes. And so we've got to be engaged and involved, and that's why Kerby has me on the show today, and that's why we're bringing attention to this, because there is something we can do. We can put pressure upon the State Department and upon this administration by talking to our representatives who control the purse strings, who are responsible for dispensing money. We can get them to stop funding Muslim nations. We have a program now that's called Refurbishing of Mosque that have been subject to war and other kinds of upgrades that they want to do to mosques across Muslim nations. And we're funding them billions of dollars to rebuild mosques. And in those same nations, they're beheading Christians, they're stealing their properties, they're raping their women, and they're killing their children and selling them into slavery.
Dulce, I wanted to give you a final word.
Well, this is totally outrageous, and I hope that I am only one of many thousands of people across the nation who will make a decision today to do what we can to put a stop to this.
I appreciate your phone call. Let's go real quickly to Georgia, listening on the Good News Network. Dwayne, you're on with Stephan Broden.
Yes, I just want to say that President Obama, his continued violation of the law is something that Congress definitely needs to look at, because he is breaking the law by giving our tax dollars to these terrorist organizations, and that to me is a impeachable offense, and it's something Congress needs to look into.
Very good. Well, that's what we're talking about here today, and that's why we're doing the rally.
Right. I tell you, Congress is the one who controls, the House of Representatives controls the flow of money, and we need to put pressure on them to defund, in many instances, many of these Muslim nations that are headed by the Brotherhood and other radical Islamic groups. In fact, in many instances, these countries have moved in that direction because of what we have done with our policies. Democracy in the Middle East has been an absolute failure for Christians.
Wow.
When these nations have turned to democracy because the majority of them are Islamic, they put into place laws and policies that are against their minority religious groups.
Yeah. Unfortunately, oftentimes they'll use democracy to impose Sharia. That certainly was the goal of the Muslim Brotherhood, and I mentioned Hamas just a minute ago and what they're doing. We're going to come back and take some more of your phone calls in just a minute. We are privileged to have in the studio for the first hour here today Stephan Broden, who is a pastor but also has been a congressional candidate, and so certainly knows his theology, but he also knows what has happened in the political realm and has really stood strong on lots of issues, including the pro-life issue we're going to get to in just a minute. But we do want to take a few more of your phone calls as we talk about this very important rally in Dallas. I recognize most of you listening cannot go to that rally. What I'm encouraging you to do is look at the information that is already on our website and on their Facebook page and see if you could do something similar in your community. I think it would make a difference. Just before we take a break, though, we've been talking about reaching the next generation. I want to talk again about how you can help us.
I have a wonderful opportunity for you today. Your gift to Point of View will have double the impact through our $50,000 Reaching the Next Generation Matching Challenge. Your gift will be matched dollar for dollar up to $50,000. Now, the deadline for the challenge is September 15th, so take a moment right now, do your part, and help us reach this goal. If you're listening to Point of View and have never supported us financially, well, today is a great day to get started. No gift is too small. Every gift is critically important. We ask that you make your best gift and help us in this challenge. Your gift will help people across the nation and around the world learn to apply biblical truth in every area of life. People will learn to develop and defend a biblical worldview, and our culture will shift back toward biblical values. Don't wait. Go right now. Make an online donation at pointofview.net, or you can call us on our toll-free number, 800-347-5151. Now remember, the opportunity expires September 15th, so do not hesitate. Go to pointofview.net, make your online donation, or call us today at 800-347-5151.
So again, we're back, and if you would like to join our conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. Stephan Broden with us for a little bit longer. We'll spend some more time taking your phone calls on this and certainly want to promote this rally. But when we come back, I also want to encourage you to get something to write with, because we're going to talk about a great resource for those of you that are, especially in the African-American community, but any community, on the pro-life issues, and Stephan has certainly been on the forefront of that. And I wanted to talk about some resources that I think you will find helpful in your community as we continue our conversation today, talking about persecuted Christians around the world and also what we can do even in our own community to bring a biblical perspective. We'll continue our conversation with him right after this.
You are listening to Point of View. For materials offered during the program, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221, zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number, 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Privileged to have in studio with us today Pastor Stefan Broden. And again, he is not only a pastor, but also ran for Congress. And we're certainly going to continue taking your phone calls. 1-800-351-1212. We've talked about the issue of persecuted Christians. Going to get into a couple of other issues in just a minute. Let's go, first of all, to Jacob. Jacob, thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Thanks, Kerby, and Pastor Stefan. Thank you for stepping up and trying to inform us and the citizens and everything around the United States of this danger that radical Islam and ISIS pose for all people. My question is, what are you doing especially to inform the black community, the black pastors, the black bishops and evangelists of this great danger and the way the government is utilizing their funds in order to fund the persecution of Christians around the earth. And my reason for saying that, many and 95% of black folks don't listen to Kerby Anderson. That may be a high number, but most of the information that they get may be on the evening news. And I think the reason why so much goes on and so many blacks are ignorant of this, the black bishops, pastors, and evangelists, they do not inform their congregation of the danger that is facing us. And my question is there any special effort made to be sure that people like T.D. Jake and all of these guys will stand up and start warning the people?
Well, we're certainly attempting to do so with programs like this, and also through our press conference that we're going to be having on Wednesday, where we have a chance to stand before the cameras and let it be known that these kinds of atrocities are happening to Christians in Muslim nations. But at the same time, we're trying to make contact, calling these churches and letting them know that we'd like for their pastors to come out and join us and to be a part of the rally that's going to happen on the 14th. But has to be a greater effort, I think. And so we're going to be trying to be as creative as we can and utilize social networking to get the information out, contact black radio stations, and if they have talk shows, try to get on their talk shows to talk about these issues. In many instances, they're looking for topics to talk about. Well, we have one here that I think ought to get the attention of most folks, and that is that the Christian community is complicit because they are using tax dollar money that's coming out of many of these churches to go in, or Christians, I should say, to go to fund these things. And so I think you can do something too. You can make it known to your pastor. You can sit down and have a meeting with him and say, we need to do something about this. Inform yourself, educate, get yourself up to speed so that you can talk with fluency on this issue and perhaps bring people to an understanding to act.
Let's just, before we leave that issue of educating the African-American community, talk about this great resource that's in front of me here. There's articles by Dr. Alveda King, by Star Parker, and by a variety of other people that I think our listeners would know, many of whom have been on the program. But this is just a great way to educate people in the black community about the pro-life issue. And you've really been on the forefront for many years addressing that issue. People can go to blackprolifemovement.blogspot.com and find some of the things that you've posted. But this is a great resource that I hope we could get out to more of the black community. Tell us about
absolutely,
that.
Yeah. Right now, in the black community here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, Planned Parenthood opened up one of the largest abortuaries in the state, a 17,000 square foot facility. And what's incredible about this, that it sits right in between or within a 2-mile radius of 7 of the largest black churches in the state. The Potter's House, Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, Full Gospel Holiness Temple, Antioch Baptist Church, Concord Baptist Church, Friendship West Baptist Church. These are black Baptist churches or black churches that have thousands of members. And Planned Parenthood had the audacity to open up one of their facilities right smack dab in the middle of the community. And here's what we do know, is that Planned Parenthood across this nation has opened the majority of its facilities in the black community.
Yes.
Almost 65% of all Planned Parenthood facilities are located in the black community or within a 2-mile radius of the black community. The founder of Planned Parenthood was Margaret Sanger. She said this: "We do not want word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population." Mm-hmm. That's the idea behind abortion that this woman perpetrated upon our nation, and they have targeted our community. I got in trouble a couple of years ago when I quoted
Keith Olbermann.
I became one of the worst persons in the world because I quoted Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who said the reason why we passed Roe v. Wade in 1973 was because we wanted to control certain people groups. And I want you to know, she wasn't talking about controlling her people group. She was talking about controlling the black people group. And the black community has been silent on this issue. We have not been engaged to the extent that we should, as we should be engaged about the issue of persecution of Christians. We ought to be engaged out of the Christian community about the extermination or the genocidal plot of Planned Parenthood to control our population. One more thought. It is demographers who say it takes 2.1 kids per family in order to replace itself. That number in the black community is down to about 0.8 or 0.1.
Wow.
It's also down in the white community to 1.8. Mm-hmm. And it takes about 100 years, Kerby, to turn that around. If, for example, we wanted to change that demographical truth, it will take 100 years for us to get it back up to 2.1.
It's just so sad. Right. This is a resource that I think people would want to get a hold of. It's 12 pages. It's kind of like an advertising supplement. So you could put it in a newspaper, you could put it in a bulletin, but it's through Human Life Alliance. How could people find out more about that? If you're a black pastor in a black community, certainly in a black church, and you're saying, oh, I'm really concerned about what abortion's doing to our community, where can they get some of those resources?
They can certainly get it at humanlife.org, and you can order it from there. It's called Did You Know? And it's just a plethora of information and statistics and facts about what's going on with abortion in the black community. We need to know. I believe there are 3 things that need to happen: information, education, and activation. Information asks and answers the question, what's going on? Education asks and answers the question, why it's happening to us? And then the final thing is activation. You cannot act unless you know what's going on and why it's happening.
Let's take one more phone call, and again, that is humanlife.org. We are obviously focusing most of our time and attention today on that rally about persecuted Christians, but I just could not have Stefan Broden in here and not talk about some of the pro-life issues, because he has certainly been a champion in that regard as well. Let's go back to the phones, though, in the state of Texas this time. KJRT, Bryant, thank you for calling today. What's your comment? Bryant, are you there?
Hello?
Yes, we'd love to hear from you.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I've been listening to y'all for a long time. And, y'all got some good points. You and other brothers, I call you warriors. And,
he is.
Most people generally don't listen to the radio. So I thought, I've been trying to get these churches to open their doors to a daily thing where people could come and study on what the radio is publishing, and put out a newspaper of some kind, because I'm not an educated person. I'm a ninth-grade dropout, I'm sorry to say. But a newspaper, the shot that was heard around the world was heard with a newspaper. The newspaper gets the word across, it gets the word in the people's hands, and then they could go looking in websites and tune into Christian radios around the nation. And but a newspaper, even relaying what y'all are saying, just download something and then publish it and send it out. If every town in the United States could get their people together to open the doors and come together and study the Word of God, the Constitution, and the problems that's going on, it would be a lot more effective if they could take notes and make their own little newspaper articles and spread it around. I promise you, man, it would work, man. This rally could go on. This rally y'all are talking about. Anyway, I think a newspaper would do wonders to help the radio and TV ministries get y'all's word out. Don't you think?
I do. And one of the things we are doing with social media is then you could print that out and make that your newspaper. If you get your show threads every day, we have the articles and all the links for Stefan Broden, for example. If you go to our Facebook page, you could print that out. In other words, you wouldn't even have to redo the typesetting. But I recognize for the younger generation, they're not used to reading paper. They're used to reading it online. So that's why we are moving from a radio ministry. And radio will always be the if you will, the generator of the content. But you go now to our social media, our Facebook page, our Twitter page, and those, recognize we're really trying to do exactly what you're talking about, especially for the 21st century. Let's take a break. We'll take another phone call or two with Stefan Broden right after these important messages.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes in studio with us today, Stefan Broden. We've been talking about persecuted Christians, and if you'd like to join us, we'll get to those phone calls in just a minute. 1-800-351-1212. In case people did not join us at the very beginning of the program there, Stefan, talk about the extent of Christian persecution in these Muslim countries right now.
Well, it's absolutely incredible. It's breathtaking and it's outrageous. What we know is that more than 150,000 Christians are murdered every year and have been since the beginning of the century. And 3/4 of those murders or the persecution that's going on is perpetrated by the Islamic or Muslim nations. I want to share a thought here. And Paul says in Colossians chapter 2, verse 8, see to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception, according to the traditions of men and the elementary principles of the world, rather than of Jesus Christ. And I believe we're living in a time of great deception. We're being deceived. And what I'm going to say here is controversial, and that is that the left's campaign in America to undermine our constitutional liberties and radical Islam's campaign to destroy our way of life have joined forces to fundamentally change our nation. Stephen Emerson, in the preface of Andy McCarthy's book called The Grand Jihad, says this, quote, Andy McCarthy has written one of the most important exposés of danger from the deception perpetrated by Islam's group in the United States in a diabolical alliance with the left wing of Americans' politics. The silence that we're seeing is happening out of Congress and out of this administration in particular may be that there is some kind of connection between the Muslim Brotherhood and the global caliphate that they're attempting to initiate across the globe. There may be something here, and I know it's controversial, but I think we need to keep our eyes open and be discerning of the moment. We're in a special eschatological time when God's program is being unfolded before us, and he is not hiding anything from us. He wants us to see it, but we got to be discerning.
Very good. And Andrew McCarthy's been on this program. Of course, Louis Gohmert and Michelle Bachmann have said some of the same things, and we even have an article that appeared a while back on our Outlook magazine that verifies some of that. But let's take a few phone calls real quickly. We'll head out to South Carolina. WKCL George, you're on with Stephan Broden.
Hi, Stephan. This is George. I heard the young man said earlier about the black preachers need to get together like T.D. Jakes and start talking to these other black churches about the Muslim, because he is correct. He is totally correct. T.D. Jakes and Clifford Dollar, all these big preachers, black preachers, need to start teaching all these other little Baptist churches and things that the Muslim got it wrong. Now, if they don't do that, this country's going down, because there's so many black Christians believe that being Muslim is okay, you know. So many black churches got Christians they buy the Muslim newspaper and read it like it's okay. They need to teach these people. Anybody who's against Israel is against God.
Very good.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. We don't have to wait for T.D. Jakes and for other pastors to do that. You can do that by going to talk to your pastors or to talking to your fellow Christians, having a study group where you can sit down and study Islam and see what they're all about and get yourself up to speed so that you can become an instrument in the hand of God to speak in the public square truth to power.
Wow. Let's take one more phone call. We're going to be tight on time here, but we'll do our best to pick up at least one more phone call. We'll go to the state of Kentucky this time. WYGE. Dean, you're on with Pastor Stephan Broden.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking my call. Yeah, I wish, as far as Islam is concerned, I get tired of hearing radical Islam. Islam is Islam. The core of the Quran is to kill non-believers. And we need to understand that this is their belief. And we have a leader in our so-called leader in our country who supports this idea. And I think it's a sad day for our country. And I get tired of hearing also, let's pray for our president. I think we need to pray that God will bring him to his knees and convert him to Christianity. Then we can pray that God will bless him. But I will not pray that God will bless a child of the devil, which I feel he is, since he is using my tax dollars to kill babies in third world countries. This is the most unheard of thing imaginable, in my opinion. Thanks for taking my call.
Well, you know, Kerby is a kind of theologian on the air. He can talk about imprecatory prayers to you guys sometime.
You certainly can. But what about that? This is one where it kind of pulls things together. You've been concerned about the pro-life need in this country, but we are, across the world, really forcing a lot of other countries in Africa and Asia and elsewhere to really adopt our pro-abortion policies as well. So we are exporting abortion.
Right. We're forcing African nations, if they want to continue to receive funding from the United States, to change their policies about homosexuality and about abortion. This is evil personified. And I do believe, Kerby, that we're living in a special eschatological moment. And what we're seeing is that the Apostle Paul said two things have to happen before the rapture. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, he says the apostasy has to happen and the lawless one has to be revealed.
Wow.
I believe that the apostasy, the falling away, is not people turning and walking away from the church. It may be people inside the church who are refusing to appropriate and apply biblical principles and taking on the responsibility as salt and light agents of the kingdom of God to speak forth against the evil that is being done in the globe. And because there is a silence right now in the church in America, that may speak worlds about this issue of apostasy and when it takes place. I think we need to redefine it and think about how it is appropriated or applied within the modern context in which we live.
Stephan, always great to have you in studio. You kind of bring both the theological and political together, and it's always great to have you in here. Let's do this again. But let's, real quickly, in case some of the people have just joined us, there is a rally that is going to be taking place this Sunday. And if you're in the Dallas area, we really want you to attend. And if you are not in the Dallas area, and 359 of those stations are not, we encourage you to think about taking some of the material that we have on the website. We have it under the articles section. We have a link of your Facebook page under the web link section, and do something similar in your community.
Absolutely.
The other issue that we talked about is the pro-life issue. And again, I would highly recommend this great resource from Human Life Alliance, and it is on our website as well. It's under the web links. We've added it since Stephan talked about that. Go to humanlife.org, and this is really aimed at the African American community, 12 pages, and people can find out a little bit more there. So,
well, let's say where the rally is going to be. It's going to be in front of the City Hall, Dallas City Hall, at 1500 Marilla Street in Dallas. So we want you to come and join us. It's at 4:30. And for those of you who are interested in protesting this large abortuary, join me at 9:45 every Saturday as we stand in front of that abortuary on Virginia Street, Planned Parenthood, to turn back and to counsel people away from using it.
Just before we take a break, let's talk about, again, what you can do to help us reach the next generation.
God greatly used Point of View to reach the last generation with biblical truth, and now He's reaching a new generation through radio and internet technology. The Point of View podcast now has 30,000 downloads each month, 1,000 a day, and the live audio stream has 11,000 streams a month, a third of those from nations around the globe. Now, even though it's still very new, the video live cast of Point of View already has almost 3,000 views in just the last month. And soon you're going to see even more ways that Point of View is using the internet to reach the next generation of listeners and viewers. Exciting things are happening at Point of View, but there is still much that needs to be done. Now, to reach the millennial generation, we have to expand our online presence even further. Please partner with Point of View today. Through your financial support, help restore Christ in our culture. Your gift today will be matched dollar for dollar through our $50,000 Reaching the Next Generation Matching Challenge. Please take a moment right now. Give your online gift at pointofview.net or call us on our toll-free line 800-347-5151. This opportunity expires September 15th. That's coming right up, so do not hesitate. Go to pointofview.net, make your online donation, or call us today at 800-347-5151.
We need to hear from you, and if you can help us out financially and appreciate the conversation we've had with Stephan Broden, we certainly encourage you to visit the website, pointofview.net. We'll get into some other very important issues right after this.
Across the nation, this is Point of View. For materials offered during the broadcast, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries and is supported by your generous tax-deductible contributions.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Second hour today, if you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Talked about persecuted Christians in the Middle East. A little bit later this hour, we'll talk about the Baltimore Ravens' Ray Rice. We've seen a new video inside the elevator. That was enough for them to suspend him. We're going to see all sorts of things happening now in that particular area. And of course, we've been talking about ISIS. Lots of very concerning news coming down about U.S. weapons now in the hands of ISIS, as well as ISIS foreign fighters, the number one threat to the United States from the former Homeland Security Director Janet Napolitano. Much more to talk about, but first wanted to give you a chance to hear a little bit more about how in many ways various industries insert themselves into the federal gravy train. And so we thought we would go to our friend David Williams of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. He is the president there. We've posted an article about burned by solar companies, just one of many examples of why we should pay attention and frankly need to ask our elected representatives how they stand on all the fraud and graft and waste and all the kickbacks and crony capitalism that we complain about so often here on Point of View. So, David Williams, thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Love to get into this issue. You know, we've heard about these solar power companies that have been a very bad investment. You go one step further and talk about the kind of subsidies being provided to rooftop solar companies. Tell us more, if you might.
Absolutely. So, this really all started a number of years ago, and I guess it was 2009 with the Solyndra loan. This was $500 million that was given to Solyndra, this company. It was a loan from the taxpayers. I mean, this was our money, taxpayer money, that went to Solyndra. They went bankrupt. They took $500 million and went bankrupt, which was extremely frustrating for taxpayers to see that money wasted in this way. Now we see another way in which these solar power companies are getting taxpayer money, and it's through tax credits. In this particular case, it's called the Solar Investment Tax Credit, which allows homeowners to install rooftop solar panels and get a tax credit of up to 30% of the cost. And, that sounds, pretty decent because, we do want to encourage new technologies, new energy sources for people to do this. But what we found out, and we did a little bit of investigation into this, it's not the homeowners that are receiving the tax credit.
Yeah.
It's the companies that are getting this. And the problem is, Kerby, is that it's the owner of the solar panels that gets the tax credit. So what the company does is they will lease the solar panels. So as a homeowner, you don't own them. You're only leasing them, so you don't have ownership, so you don't get the tax credit.
Yes, and again, I'm all about the government doing a little bit to stimulate it. I believe more in a free market, and I think if it were, the truth be told, most of these so-called alternative energy sources have not been able to meet the basic test of a market system. But okay, even if you can see that maybe we could do a little bit to stimulate renewable resources like solar, you would at least expect that the encouragement and the incentive would be for the homeowner to have rooftop solar panels. But as you just pointed out, the gimmick is that the owner of the home is not the owner of the solar panel. So really, it's just another very convenient kickback to some of these companies.
It is, and this is a kickback, and these companies are receiving tens of millions of dollars, per company in these kickbacks. And what we see is it's just the tip of the iceberg, putting these solar panels on top of a house, because there are so many other problems with it. First of all, it devalues the house by about $10,000 to $15,000. So
wow.
It's imagine this: you lease a car. You don't own a car; you lease it. We all are familiar with what leasing a car means. Is that you have to give it back at some point, or you can buy it outright at that same point. But you don't own that car; it is owned by the bank and the dealership. So imagine having a house where you park a leased car on top of the roof, and you try to sell that house.
Yeah,
it's a problem.
That doesn't increase the value of the house; it decreases it. Yes, it's just unbelible. You just can't make some of this stuff up.
Exactly.
Well,
at least if you own the car and the car was on top of your house, that would be an asset, but it isn't.
It isn't. I really want to go beyond that, but the one that I thought would really be an attention grabber is simply because so many people have paid attention to some of these handouts for Solyndra. But this one is another one of those gimmicks, and once you do the investigation, you begin to realize that it doesn't even meet the straight face test. And I think the fact that both of us are laughing right now illustrates that. But David, for just a minute, talk about the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. We haven't had you on very often. I would imagine most people are not familiar with what you're doing, but there is such a need right now for various groups to root out waste, fraud, kickbacks, crony capitalism, and that's really what your organization is all about.
It absolutely is. We are a nonpartisan, and I want to emphasize that, because there are Republicans doing bad things, Republicans doing good things. There are Democrats doing bad things, Democrats doing good things. We are nonpartisan, and we're looking for solutions to the deficit, to the debt. We want more transparency in the government. We look at excessive regulations, excessive taxation. So we really are a good government group and are trying to come up with solutions to the problems, because it's not just enough to complain. We need solutions to the problems. And I've been doing this, not with this organization, but I've been doing this for 21 years. So I've been a taxpayer advocate for 21 years. And I have seen so many frustrating things the government has done. And I think the biggest frustration, as you said, is corporate welfare, crony capitalism, is when the government gives handouts to companies, Fortune 500 companies. And it's so frustrating because taxpayers, we work hard for our money. And we pay our taxes, and we try to provide our families with a decent living, and then we see our money go to these companies that only get it because they have a team of lobbyists that are on Capitol Hill and have access to the members of Congress, while we may not TPA, but as individuals, we may not when we live in California, Pennsylvania, or Washington, have access. And it's a shame that just because we don't have access to members of Congress, our needs aren't always heard.
Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, thought I'd get into one other issue that you've been talking about quite a bit on the Taxpayers Protection Alliance website, which is available on your website if you would like to find it, protectingtaxpayers.org. And that has to do with the issue of the internet access taxes. Want to get into that issue and talk about some of that. And if you want to join our conversation, we'll stay with David Williams for just a few more minutes, and then we're going to move on to some of the issues in the news, and there are many. But if you have some comments or questions about waste and graft and fraud and crony capitalism, certainly those phone calls are appropriate at this moment. 1-800-351-1212. David Williams with us. We have his article. We have information about his website, and we certainly encourage you to learn a little bit more. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more right after this.
Point of View commentary with Kerby Anderson.
You know, the last few months have shown that the terrorist group ISIS is an extremely dangerous organization. We are seeing the horrific pictures from a terrorist organization that kills both Muslim and Christian with little provocation. The Daily Signal posted 11 reasons why ISIS might be more dangerous than Al-Qaeda. One reason is the fact that ISIS is more media sophisticated than Al-Qaeda and excels in using social media as a tool of terrorism. They post various tweets and videos in English in order to strike terror in the hearts of the West. Another reason is that this terrorist organization is flush with cash. As I mentioned in my commentary last week, they earn millions of dollars each day from the oil fields they occupy and from the extensive extortion racket. ISIS is also more dangerous than Al-Qaeda because of the land it occupies. It currently controls territory the size of Maryland in the very heart of the Arab world. By contrast, Al-Qaeda controls no major territory and is dependent upon the Afghan and Pakistani militants who serve as their hosts. ISIS is also the most heavily armed Islamic extremist group in history, having captured huge amounts of military weapons and equipment in Iraq and Syria. It is also acting like its own state or country with its own army, administration, judiciary, and Muslim propaganda operation. Another reason for the danger of ISIS has been its ability to attract recruits. Many al-Qaeda-linked groups are now pledging allegiance to ISIS. This is also giving the terrorist organization access to a global network of terrorists. They also benefit by the fact that the dissolving borders of Syria and Iraq make it easier for recruits to connect up with ISIS militants. A final reason is the vision of ISIS to once again establish a caliphate with the leader of ISIS as the new caliph. This is also attracting Muslim support and may prove to be another major recruiting tool. In many ways, ISIS may indeed be more dangerous than Al-Qaeda. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
If you'd like to join a conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. Let's go to Frank in Georgia. You're on with David Williams of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. Frank, thanks for joining us today.
Fine. Thank you, sir. Hey, I have a comment as far as about the way our government, how it's crumbling. You take the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Persians, the Romans, they're all world empires, and they all crumbled within their own government because of greed and everything else.
Yes.
The only way we're ever going to get straightened out is if we literally just get rid of the government and start fresh.
Yeah, I wish there was a way we could do that because, Frank, I tend to be the optimist and encouraging, but I am really concerned about the fact that it seems like and Frank, I think, David, really illustrating the concern we have. We send people to Washington, and some kind of keep their wits about them, but most don't, and they get kind of eaten up by the system. And we just see the K Street lobbyists continue to pile more and more. We have debt that's now getting pretty close to $18 trillion, and nobody seems to be concerned. I know that's something that I know has concerned you for many years, and one of the reasons why you're the president of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance.
Well, and Frank, what concerns me, the people that come to Washington, D.C. and leave millionaires, they come into this city and leave very rich people. This is a city that you're supposed to come into, and it's supposed to be about public service. But people see the almighty dollar, and I don't begrudge anyone, making money, but when it's making money on the back of taxpayers and really, corrupting the system, that's where I draw the line, and it's just, it's really frustrating to see members of Congress, Eric Cantor, a Republican. he lost his primary and he left Congress. And now he's working for a lobbying firm, probably making upwards of $750,000 a year. He didn't even, fill out his term as a member of Congress. He made a pledge. When you are elected to office, you're pledging to your people that you are going to serve them for that amount of time. And that's what frustrates me, is that it's the hubris and that just the greed that goes along with it.
Well, and we've talked about that with some of the various books that have been written about Speaker of the House here and a member of Congress there. And as you said, the iron triangle sometimes of being in government and being a lobbyist and all the rest. I did not know the Eric Cantor one. That's an interesting story. But one of the other issues that I wanted to talk about is not everybody would be affected by solar panels on the roof. But a lot of people are going to be affected by the issue of internet access taxes. And your organization, Taxpayers Protection Alliance, has come out and actually urged the Senate to stop internet access taxes. So talk about that issue and how that would affect all of our listeners that use the internet in one way or another.
This is critically important because right now there's a moratorium on internet access taxes, that you don't pay a tax to access the internet. In about 50 days, that all can change. November 1st of this year, that moratorium runs out. Congress has to proactively either extend the moratorium or make it permanent. We would love for them to make it permanent. The House has passed legislation saying make it permanent. The Senate has not. And they are going to be in session for 2 weeks starting tomorrow. Then when they leave at the end of the month, they won't come back until after the election. So until after this moratorium runs out, this is time critical right now. And it's frustrating to think that we pay members of Congress $174,000 a year, $286,000 with benefits, and they're going to be in session 2 weeks this month, and then they're gone for another 5 weeks. They just came back from a 5-week vacation, but I can't emphasize and stress enough how this could change the internet. If your state and your locality have the ability to tax your access to the internet, because states are lazy. When they run up budget deficits, they raise taxes. They don't cut spending, and this is a tax they would love to be able to implement.
Let's, if we can, first of all, talk about the fact that there is a bill, and it is bipartisan because you have John Thune, who's a Republican from South Dakota. You have Ron Wyden, who is a Democrat from Oregon, and they're sponsors. So, I mean, first of all, it's pretty bipartisan. This is one of those times where we're not talking about left and right, Republican and Democrat. And that is the Internet Tax Freedom Forever Act. I don't know if that one will pass, but let's help people understand that this is to access the Internet. There's, of course, another big issue about whether or not states can tax if you receive goods from that state. But there are kind of two issues. But explain what that would mean to the average listener, because right now we assume that we can get onto the Internet just like you can have an on-ramp onto a freeway. But now there would be a toll booth there, would there not be? Explain what that might mean.
There absolutely would be. Think about if you have a landline or a wireless phone, all the different taxes that are associated with phone service. We could see that with the Internet. Right now, over the past 20 years, the Internet, just what we've seen in innovation has been amazing. Because they've had a light regulatory touch on it. There haven't been taxes, but that could all change, and you could be paying upwards of 18, 19, or even 20% of your your internet bill would be, in addition to that, would be taxes, just money to give the state. And we're not talking about infrastructure. We're not talking about making the internet better. This is just the state seeing an opportunity to get more money from you. So if you're paying $50 a month, think about what 20% is, and over a year, it starts to add up. I mean, and everyone is using the internet. Whether it's for medical records to send from your doctor to another doctor to the pharmacy, or weather information to see if schools are closed. I mean, there's so many ways we access the internet, and it's just and politicians are salivating. They're salivating at the prospect of taxing that. That's why we have to stop them. And you mentioned it's bipartisan. How many times do we see Republicans and Democrats getting along and sponsoring a bill? And this is one. This should be an easy one. This is not difficult. This should be easy.
Well, again, we encourage you. And we have given you a little bit of information, obviously, about wanted you to recognize that there's another issue, and even if you don't plan on putting solar panels on your home and having them leased, again, it just makes you just roll your eyes at that one, makes my head explode. There is one that can affect all of us, because virtually all of us use the internet in one way or another, and that's a particular piece of legislation. So we're going to continue to educate you about that, and I appreciate, David, the work that you've done in that regard, and thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
Going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to open up the phones to give you a chance to join our conversation. We're going to have a lot to talk about today. I was thinking I might say a little bit about Baltimore Ravens Ray Rice, because I've done a commentary going all the way back to August 7th, because they decided to suspend him 2 games, at least the NFL did. Well, now the Baltimore Ravens decided to terminate his contract because of the video, which I don't recommend too many of you watching if you're faint-hearted at all, in which he actually now see how he did knock his, at that time, girlfriend, now wife, out. And so that's an issue on the table. We also have the president saying the other day, we're not going to talk about immigration until after the election. The cynicism of that is huge. And, of course, we have talked about ISIS as well. But as we come to a break here, I did want to once again just talk about all the things that we're going to be unleashing very shortly. Our Pray, Organize, and Vote election site, our live cast that we have already, our podcast, our video series. There's a lot coming. And this is one of the ways in which you can support us by trying to reach the next generation.
I have a wonderful opportunity for you today. Your gift to Point of View will have double the impact through our $50,000 Reaching the Next Generation Matching Challenge. Your gift will be matched dollar for dollar up to $50,000. Now, the deadline for the challenge is September 15th, so take a moment right now, do your part, and help us reach this goal. If you're listening to Point of View and have never supported us financially, well, today is a great day to get started. No gift is too small. Every gift is critically important. We ask that you make your best gift and help us in this challenge. Your gift will help people across the nation and around the world learn to apply biblical truth in every area of life. People will learn to develop and defend a biblical worldview, and our culture will shift back toward biblical values. Don't wait. Go right now. Make an online donation at pointofview.net, or you can call us on our toll-free number, 800-347-5151. Now remember, the opportunity expires September 15th, so do not hesitate. Go to pointofview.net, make your online donation, or call us today at 800-347-5151.
If you'd like to join us on air, 1-800-351-1212. But as you go to our website, I hope that you will take the time to support this ministry. Had someone say earlier, a lot of people don't listen to Kerby Anderson. You know what? I understand that. That's one of the reasons why we've been in the process of taking this radio ministry and expanding it to a full media ministry so we can reach people through other venues than just the radio program. We're grateful for those of you that listen, but there are other people we want to reach, and by your gift, you can help us do so. We'll be back right after this.
You are listening to Point of View. For materials offered during the program, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221, zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number, 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Final half hour, if you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Open line, and there are all sorts of issues we've put on the table. So if you would like to join us today, feel free to give us a call. 1-800-351-1212, 1-800-351-1212. First hour today, of course, we talked a little bit with Pastor Stephen Broden, spent some time talking about this rally that will be taking place on Sunday in Dallas. But again, many of you do not live in Dallas, but we wanted to educate you about the fact that this particular rally really speaking to the issue of persecuted Christians is something that we would encourage you to do in your own community. If you say, well, how do we cover that? What do we call it? What might be some of the topics that speakers would address? The good news is on our website, we have provided quite a bit of that. And so you can go to the articles section, Rally for Persecuted Christians, or you can even go to the Facebook link that we have provided there, the DFW Rally in support of persecuted Christians, and encourage you to do that. When Stephen Broden was here, we also mentioned how it would be very helpful, especially in light of what has happened in many of the black communities where Planned Parenthood is, to provide an alternative. And so one of the things that we have also done is posted a link to Human Life Alliance. They have lots of great resources. One of them is entitled Do You Know? I'll hold it up here to the camera. Some of you can kind of see that it's a 12-page, sort of like an advertising, a supplement that you would see in a newspaper. So you could put it in a newspaper. You could put it in a church bulletin. You could pull some of the articles out by all sorts of different individuals. Dr. Alveda King has written in there, Star Parker, Noreen Johnson, to mention just a few. And it's kind of a who's who of all sorts of individuals that write. And then also there are some very powerful testimonies about the issue of abortion, about adoption, and it is really geared to the African American community. And it is striking in that last page. Maybe we can put this on our Facebook page. The approximate number of African American deaths from HIV, from violence, from accidents, from cancer, from heart disease, and then abortion off the charts. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And so, again, a resource that we wanted to let you know about, and there is information on our website so that you can find out a little bit more. If that's not enough, we do have a few other things to cover. One that I've sort of covered from time to time. I did a commentary back in August. A week ago, I talked about it again, and now it is in the news. And that is the Baltimore Ravens running back, Ray Rice, actually punched his fiancée in an elevator. Now, up until yesterday, or even this morning, most of us had seen the one video from Atlantic City where he is dragging her out of the elevator. Well, that was enough to have Roger Goodell and the NFL to suspend him for 2 games. I kind of rolled my eyes when I said it was a suspension for 2 games because I was actually able to go to a pre-game, pre-season game in which the Dallas Cowboys were playing the Baltimore Ravens. And lo and behold, who's running up and down the field? Ray Rice. So, yeah, he was suspended from 2 official games, but he was still in the practice field. He was still playing in the preseason games, and he was hoping that after next week, he would then be playing for the rest of the season. Well, it didn't quite turn out so well, and now the Baltimore Ravens have decided to terminate his contract. And I know that there are probably a fair number of you that aren't really sports fans, but let me once again make the case for why I think we should pay attention to something like this. And that is, here you have an individual with very high profile. Many of you may have never heard of him before, but whether it's a high-profile athlete, whether it's an actor, whether it's a musician, when that individual physically abuses a woman and then receives little punishment, I think it sends the wrong signal to society. I'd love to have some of you call in with your concerns about domestic violence. What kind of signal are we sending in society? And as we have pointed out here before, he received a 2-game suspension. To put that in perspective, he could have received a much more significant 8-game suspension if he had been caught smoking marijuana. As one wag said it, that's the equivalent of knocking out 8 women. So you can see that for a whole season. Or then again, you have the 6-game suspension. There's a 5-game suspension for one individual because he was accused of getting free tattoos in college. And of course, as I've said before, just imagine if he was caught on camera making some derogatory comment about, say, homosexuals or something like that. So when the NFL evaluated this, they now have come forward, as we mentioned last week, with the idea that physical abuse now is in their policy manual as a 6-game suspension. And I was thinking that that would apply retroactively to Ray Rice. That was not the case, but now, of course, something else is actually applied. And so there are lots of issues on the table. The first of which is that the NFL had a policy for drug abuse. It had a policy for marijuana use. It had a policy apparently for even getting free tattoos from your college, but it didn't have a policy until recently on domestic abuse, and that is of a concern. So again, I think we now have seen that this sort of pushed Ray Rice over the line. Once people saw him giving her a left uppercut, then she drops back, hits the railing in the elevator, and then he's seen then trying to figure out how to drag her out of the elevator before the door closes on her feet. I think it was just simply too much for the NFL, perhaps too much for the Baltimore Ravens. So if you'd like to join us on that topic, we talk so often here, and we'll do programs in the future on domestic abuse, verbal abuse, bullying, which we did just last week or week or two before with June Hunt. Those are certainly relevant issues. 1-800-351-1212. But one of the other topics that is going to be in the news, we certainly mentioned it on Friday when we had Louis Gohmert in studio, was the issue of immigration. And the Wall Street Journal today said, so President Obama says he still plans to unilaterally rewrite the immigration law, but not until the election, so he can spare Democrats in Congress from the wrath of voters for doing so. And he wonders why Americans are so cynical about politics, so says the editors of the Wall Street Journal. They said that White House leakers are saying that Mr. Obama wants to fulfill his June pledge to issue a lawless regulation limiting deportations for millions of illegal immigrants, but he has decided to bow to incumbent Democrats who fear a political backlash that would hand Republican Senate control in November. Mark Pryor in Arkansas, Jeanne Shaheen in New Hampshire, and even Al Franken, the Minnesota hyperliberal, have begged Mr. Obama to delay, they say. And on Meet the Press, the president said, and you know, the truth of the matter is that the politics did shift midsummer because of that problem. He was, of course, referring to the rush of Central American children seeking U.S. asylum at the border. He went on to say, and Meet the Press before Chuck Todd, I want to spend some time, even as we're getting all our ducks in a row for the executive action, also want to make sure that the public understands why we're doing this, why it's the right thing for the American people, and why it's the right thing for the American economy. Then he added, and what I want to do is, when I take executive action, I want to make sure that it's sustainable. Well, nevertheless, you have to believe that this is a pretty cynical action. If indeed the president had done this before the election, I think it, as the Wall Street Journal editors rightly understood, would affect the election or maybe the defeat of some of these candidates because of the decision in Kansas right now where the Democratic challenger to Pat Roberts has stepped down. It is quite possible that a Republican defeat in Kansas is possible. Thus, it makes it a little more difficult for a Republican takeover of the U.S. Senate. And this is one more attempt by the president to prevent the Republican takeover from taking place, so that any of those individuals who are up for re-election who are Democrats in some of these states, especially that where they might be vulnerable, are not going to have to be saddled with his decision until after the election. And I agree with the Wall Street Journal. If anybody wonders why the American people and the younger generation, the millennials, are perhaps the most cynical and skeptical about politics, they need only look at the decision by this president to wait until after November to then have an executive order that will no doubt have a profound, and I suspect probably negative impact on the American people and the American economy. He may think it's the right thing for the American people and the right thing for the American economy. We don't know exactly what he's going to do, but if our guesses are right, it's going to be anything but. Let's take a break, though. Perhaps you have some comments about anybody from Ray Rice to immigration to certainly persecuted Christians and the pro-life issue. Those are just a few issues we put on the table. We have a few more, but I'll take some of your phone calls as well. 1-800-351-1212. We'll be back right after this.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes. I can see that our callers are on all sorts of issues, and that is why we have an open line from time to time to give you a chance to comment on everything from Ray Rice to immigration. Those are all topics on the screen, so let's take them one by one. Let's go back to the state of Kentucky. Rhonda, thank you for calling this time.
Hi. I think that famous people, whether they be sports figures, actors, whatever, domestic abuse rules that apply to regular people should apply to them. They should go to jail.
It'll be interesting to see if they, I guess since the girlfriend, now wife, didn't press charges, maybe that wouldn't happen, but I'm with you. I think we need to have the same laws apply to everyone. And I think we need to educate young girls and even older girls that it's not their fault when they get hit. And when Ray Rice's wife, because now she's married him, apologized at the press conference, I'm going, what? You might have said a couple words to him, but that doesn't justify you getting knocked out in an elevator. I mean, she is knocked out cold, unconscious. And before we saw him dragging her out of the elevator, that was bad enough. But then when you see her knock her down and knock her out, probably gave her a concussion, you have to say something should have happened. That's for sure.
Hey, my husband tried to hit me one time. I told him right then and there, I said, all right, you hit me now because you're bigger than I am. But when you go to bed, you better watch out. And you got to go to sleep sometime, and then I'll be gone in the morning.
Yep.
Never did it again.
Yep. I'll be gone, or I'll get out the frying pan and make sure that we can even up the odds a little bit. Thank you, Rhonda. Very important point. Let's continue our conversation. So many individuals that want to address these topics, so we'll go to, I guess we'll stay in Kentucky for another minute. WYGN. Kenny, thank you for calling today.
Well, hello there, feller.
Hey, thank you for calling.
Hey, I'm so very grateful. Yeah, I was thinking on a little bit, puzzling some, but it does seem like that NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement,
right?
They could never get this thing to fly. Couldn't really get off the ground, though they pushed it very hard. But to leave the border open, the Mexican, in Texas there, to leave that border open, there is no sovereignty of the United States. So, going around the back way, they don't need NAFTA. And they just let them come and do as they will.
Yeah, I mean, the president, in some respects, is going to have an executive order that will continue. Now, let's be fair, because a lot of people say, oh, you're just bashing the president. No, I mean, this started long before President Obama was even thinking about running for office. So that goes back to George Herbert Walker Bush, certainly Bill Clinton, and most importantly, George W. Bush. So there has been a push for some time for a North American free trade zone, NAFTA, World Trade Organization, all of those things that we've talked about here on Point of View. I think it's about time to do another one of those programs on how we have lost our sovereignty and what those trade agreements really mean. So, Kenny, I appreciate you giving me a good suggestion there. That'll be a future program. And I'm going to keep on moving because we have lots of phone calls to try to get to. So we'll start over in another state here. We'll go in Arkansas. And Bruce, what would you like to share with us today?
Yes, sir. This whole border thing, it's got to be put to a stop. We've got tons and tons of illegal aliens coming across, and we've got tons of terrorists coming across, and we've got to put a stop to that. I'm a soldier, and I think our next major battlefield is right here in the United States.
I'm wondering
if we don't put a stop to it. We've got to get control.
Well, first of all, thank you for your service, and second of all, we may need your service because I can tell you that we have a southern border with Mexico, but most of that border, a very disproportionately large percentage of that is in the state of Texas. And I can tell you that in the state of Texas, but also in the southern part of Arizona, there are farmers there that feel like they are already in an armed camp because individuals come across not just looking for a job. There are individuals coming across that are moving drugs across, and there are drug runners running across. And when we had Louis Gohmert on Friday talking about that, he was telling some stories about various tricks that were used to make sure that the Border Patrol were not near the border where they would start shooting so that something can cross. And you wonder, well, what were they crossing there? Were they bringing nuclear weapons? Were they bringing drugs? Were they bringing a high-value target? What is it? So we really have to be serious about protecting the American border, especially our southern border. And before it's all through, we might ask some of you that have military experience to go down and help out.
Absolutely. We were in an operation called Noble Eagle that we went down and guarded the border for several months, I think about 12 to 16 months. And our hands were basically tied when we were doing that operation. And
I understand.
A lot of them we just had to let in, and it was basically a big waste of money. But killing of these Christians around the world, that's pitiful. And we've got to put a stop to that, too. I mean, we can't be the almighty hand of God, but we can sure put a dent in their plans.
Well, that's why we wanted to give you some action items. First of all, a rally like the one that will be taking place in Dallas Sunday on the 14th, but also to contact your members of Congress and say, Why are we sending money to Muslim countries that are killing Christians? I mean, that's a pretty simple question to ask, and I'd like to find that out from some of the candidates running right now. Almost out of time. Let me see if I can get a quick phone call in from California, KYCC. Ray, what would you like to share with our audience today?
Yes, regarding, first, thank God that we're still in America and we can speak openly like this, and thank you for this radio station.
Thank you.
With this Obama that we have here as the president, if he can give us a guarantee on the 11 million estimated illegal aliens that are here already, that none of them are sleeper cell terrorists, then I would be okay with an executive order. But until then we need to stop that. We need to speak up. We need to voice our opinion, and we the people need to rally back up. Because I feel with 11 million of these illegal immigrants, we'll lose our patriotism. We'll no longer have a unity America as I was raised. And by the way, I'm a Texan and a Hispanic male, and I am not for amnesty.
Good. I wish I had a little more time. Love to hear a little bit more of your story. You call back again. We've had callers today from Georgia and Texas and South Carolina, Massachusetts, Kentucky, California, to mention just a few, and you and other states as well. We've got an election coming up, and I think you need to know where your candidates stand on some of these issues we've talked about today here on Point of View. So I hope that you will educate yourself on those issues. Just before we run out of time, though, I wanted to one more time talk about the fact that we have a match on the table. It ends this Friday, and this is a way in which you can have your donation to Point of View doubled, and here's how you can do so.
God is doing some exciting things at Point of View. You know, in just the next few weeks, Point of View will launch a new online video series aimed at reaching the millennial generation. You're also going to see the launch of our new website, our election microsite providing resources for the November election. We've got the recently launched video livecast growing very rapidly, thousands of views every month. Using internet technology, Point of View is reaching a wider audience than ever before, but there is still much that needs to be done. Tremendous opportunities to expand the reach of the ministry and touch even more lives with biblical truth. Your financial support for Point of View impacts the lives of people across this nation and literally around the world. And today, your gift will have double the impact. That's right, double, through our $50,000 Reaching the Next Generation Matching Challenge. Your gift today to help restore Christ in our culture will be doubled, dollar for dollar, up to $50,000. So please, take a moment right now, go online and make your gift at pointofview.net, or call us on our toll-free line, 800-347-5151. This opportunity expires September 15th. That's coming right up, so please don't hesitate. Go to pointofview.net, make your online donation, or call us today, 800-347-5151.
If you appreciated some of the conversation we've had today, certainly we would appreciate your financial support. This week we're going to be hearing from Rick Santorum and Brian Loretz and all sorts of great guests. So if you appreciate what we do, we certainly want to hear from you. I want to thank Andrew and Catherine and Chris for the help behind the scenes. Be back here tomorrow.
You have been listening to Point of View. For materials offered on the program, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number, 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151.
Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries and is supported by your generous tax-deductible contributions.